Mark had never expected the world to change in a single evening, but it did. One moment Sarah had been there, laughing softly across his apartment, the smell of her perfume filling the room like sunlight. The next, she was gone. Not a goodbye. Not a note. Not a reason. Just a closed door, a faint echo of her presence, and the hollow ache in his chest that refused to let him breathe. He sat on the couch, staring at the doorway, imagining every possible reason she might have left. His mind ran wild with memories. The nights they stayed up talking until dawn, the quiet Sunday mornings drinking coffee in silence. The long drives where neither of them needed to speak because the presence of the other was enough. Those memories now cut him like shards of glass, beautiful and painful at once. For days he drifted through his life as if he were watching it from the outside. Work became a blur, meals were skipped, and friends' calls went unanswered. Every corner of his apartment seemed to carry her, the soft throw on the couch she had chosen, the mugs they had used together, the tiny pile of books she had left behind. He couldn't bring himself to pack them away or clean the place. To do so would be to erase her, and he wasn't ready for that. Even when he tried to focus, his thoughts kept returning to her absence. How could someone who once meant everything just walk away? He had begged himself to remember the last time they had spoken, every small word, every expression, trying to find the moment when things had shifted. But it was like chasing shadows. Weeks passed in a fog. Mark found himself wandering the city streets at night, drawn to places he and Sarah had loved. They had a little Italian cafe where they spent hours talking about nothing, a quiet bookstore where they had argued playfully over which novels were better, a small park with a pond where they had fed ducks in the early mornings. Each place reminded him of her, and each memory made the pain sharper. He kept asking himself if she had stopped thinking about him. She had already moved on, and each thought was worse than the last. Then, one rainy Thursday morning, as Mark was lost in his thoughts and staring blankly at the kitchen wall, the knock came. It was soft at first, almost hesitant, but persistent enough to pull him from his reverie. He frowned, surprised. He hadn't expected anyone. He lived alone, and he rarely got visitors. He opened the door cautiously, only to find a woman standing there, drenched by the rain. She was older than Sarah, with an elegance that made Mark feel suddenly self-conscious in his sweatpants. Her eyes were serious, but not unkind, and there was a strange familiarity in her gaze that he couldn't place immediately. "Are you Mark?" she asked, her voice soft but confident. "Yes," he said slowly. "Can I help you?" "I'm Sarah's mother," she said. The words hit him like a splash of cold water. His heart skipped a beat, confusion surging. Sarah's mother, why would she come here? Mark stepped aside, unsure what else to do. She entered, shaking off the rain, letting the water drip onto the rug. The room smelled faintly of her perfume and wet earth. She looked around the apartment as if taking in every detail, pausing for a long moment at the sofa where he had spent countless evenings with Sarah. "I think you deserve to know why she left," she said finally, sitting down carefully. Her voice carried a weight that made Mark lean forward instinctively. He wanted to ask so many questions, but the words stuck in his throat. His chest ached with the weight of unspoken thoughts, a mixture of fear, hope, and longing. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the rain tapping against the windows. "She's going through something," the woman began. "Something she couldn't explain, even to herself. She didn't want to hurt you, so she left. But she thinks about you every day. She regrets leaving, Mark." Mark felt a mix of relief and disbelief. Regret. She thought about him. His heart clenched and a knot formed in his stomach. I don't understand," he said, his voice barely audible. "She's scared," her mother said, her tone gentle. "Scared of losing herself, scared of losing you. But the truth is, she never stopped caring. She never stopped loving you. The words stirred something deep inside him. 'Twas more than hope hit, was a fragile light in the darkness of his heartbreak. For weeks, he had been trapped in the suffocating weight of her absence, and now this woman, a stranger in a sense, was giving him a reason to believe. I thought she just left me," he admitted. "I thought she didn't care anymore. She does," Mark, her mother, said firmly, but softly. "She just didn't know how to face it. Sometimes people do things that seem cruel because they think it's the only way to protect the ones they love. She wanted to protect you from her own fear, from the chaos she felt inside." Mark's mind raced. He tried to imagine what could have made Sarah feel so uncertain, so compelled to walk away from everything they had. He had loved her with every part of himself, and the thought that she had been carrying her own pain alone hurt more than anything. The woman paused and looked at him, her expression softening. "She asked me to come to you. She couldn't do it herself, but she wanted you to know the truth. She wanted you to understand her feelings before it's too late." Mark's hands tightened around the edge of the couch, his mind spinning. He had been ready to give up, to let the heartbreak swallow him whole. But now there was a possibility, fragile, tender possibility that things could still change. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, worn and slightly crumpled at the edges. "She asked me to give you this," she said, handing it to him. Mark hesitated, his fingers trembling as he took the envelope. His heart was pounding so loudly he could barely hear her speak over it. He unfolded the paper inside carefully. His eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, and he felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Sarah's words were honest, full of longing, regret, and love. She had poured her heart into that letter, telling him how much she missed him, how she wished she had been brave enough to stay, how leaving had been the hardest decision of her life. But there was one part of the letter that made him hold his breath. The ending, a question, a plea, an invitation. "If you still want me, meet me where we first fell in love. Tomorrow at sunset." The letter trembled in his hands, and the rain outside seemed to echo the rush of emotion he felt. Fear, excitement, and doubt collided inside him, leaving him dizzy. He felt a strange thrill, like the first day he had met her all over again, but tempered with the weight of the heartbreak he had endured. "Will she come?" he asked the woman, almost afraid of the answer. "I can't promise," she said, "but she wants to. She wanted me to give you this before she couldn't ask herself. Don't let fear stop you. Sometimes love needs a leap of faith." Mark nodded, unable to speak. The rain continued to tap against the windows, a soft rhythm that matched the pulse of his own heart. He stared at the envelope, at the words she had written, feeling the full weight of the past weeks, the heartbreak, the longing, the quiet, despair melting into something fragile and beautiful. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of clarity. He realized he still loved her. He realized that, despite the pain, despite the uncertainty, he was willing to take the chance. And in that moment, he knew that tomorrow, at sunset, he would be there. He would wait for her. As her mother stood to leave, she gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember, love isn't always perfect, but it's always worth it." Mark watched her go, closing the door behind her, leaving him alone with the letter, the rain, and a heart that dared to hope again. He sat back on the couch, unfolding the letter once more, reading her words as if trying to memorize them. The world outside continued its rhythm, the city noises, the rain, the soft hum of life, but inside, time seemed to hold still. Everything had changed in an instant. Yet the possibility of a new beginning hung in the air, delicate and electric dot. And as the sun began its slow climb in the sky, Mark felt a quiet determination take root. He would go tomorrow. He would see her, and maybe, just maybe, the heartbreak that had once seemed insurmountable would transform into a love stronger than he had ever imagined. The next day felt impossibly long for Mark. Every hour dragged, and yet every tick of the clock felt urgent, as if time itself were urging him toward the evening. He had read Sarah's letter countless times, memorized each word, yet doubt lingered. What if she didn't come? What if it had all been too much for her? But the thought of waiting, of not knowing, was unbearable by late afternoon. He found himself standing in front of the park where they had first fallen in love. It was a small, quiet place, not crowded even on a sunny day, and now bathed in the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. He had chosen this spot deliberately. 'Twas where their story had begun, where they had laughed, argued playfully, shared secrets beneath the shade of a big oak tree. It felt sacred now, place suspended between the past and what might still come. Mark walked the familiar paths, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning every bench, every tree, every corner where she might appear. The wind stirred the leaves above, him carrying with it a scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass, a smell that reminded him of their first spring together. He tried to calm the nervous flutter in his chest, but it was impossible. His heart raced, every beat echoing the same question. Would she really come? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. He imagined her arriving from the edge of the park, hair shining in the sunlight, eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. He imagined her hesitating, unsure if he would still be there. And then stepping forward with that familiar smile that had once made his world stop. He shook his head, trying to chase the daydreams away, telling himself to stay focused. But he couldn't. Every memory of her pulled at him, demanding attention. Then, just as the sun began to lower toward the horizon, he saw her. Sarah, she, appeared at the edge of the park, her silhouette outlined by the fading light. She moved cautiously, almost as if testing the world to see if it had changed. Her hair caught the sun, glowing like fire, and she wore the same hesitant smile he remembered so well. Mark felt a sudden ache, a mixture of longing and relief, as if the sight of her had unlocked months of tension and grief in an instant. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the park, the space between them heavy with unspoken words. The past weeks of silence, heartbreak, and confusion hovered in the air like a storm, and yet the sun, warm and golden, seemed to calm it all. Mark's chest felt tight, and he realized how much he had missed her presence, how much he had needed her even when he didn't know it. Finally, Sarah took a hesitant step forward. Her hands were slightly trembling, and she looked around nervously as if expecting something to go wrong. "Hi," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. I wasn't ready before." Mark felt his throat tighten. "I know," he said softly. "I missed you." Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked down briefly before meeting his gaze again. "I missed you too," she admitted, voice breaking. "More than I can explain." They began to walk slowly toward each other, the distance closing, but still hesitant. Neither wanted to rush, neither wanted to break the fragile moment they were rebuilding. Each step was deliberate, each movement full of careful emotion. The world around them, the park, the fading sunlight, the gentle rustle of leaves seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. I don't even know where to start," Sarah said, finally breaking the silence. "I left because I was scared of losing myself, scared of losing us. But leaving hurt more than staying ever could." Mark nodded, feeling his own emotions rise to the surface. "I thought I'd lost you," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know how to reach you, and every day without you felt impossible. I kept hoping, though, hoping you would come back." Her lips trembled into a small smile. "I should have trusted you more. I should have told you how I felt instead of running away. I was afraid my fears would push you away if I shared them." Reached out gently, his hand brushing against hers. The contact was electric, yet tender, a reminder of everything they had once shared and could still rebuild. "We don't have to figure everything out at once," he said. "We just start. Here, together. For a long moment, they walked in silence, hands brushing, letting the comfort of each other's presence speak for what words could not. The world seemed to narrow around them, the park and the sunset creating a bubble of intimacy and possibility. I kept thinking about that first spring, Sarah said softly, glancing at the trees above. Do you remember the picnic under the big oak? Mark smiled, the memory vivid. How could I forget? You insisted we feed the ducks and then got mad when they stole half our sandwiches. She laughed, a sound that made his chest ache with longing. I thought you would be upset, but you just laughed and said it was worth it. That's when I realized I loved you. Truly. Mark felt tears prick at his own eyes. I loved you too. Still do. Every single day. They found a bench near the pond, the same spot where they had first shared secrets and quiet dreams. Sitting side by side, they watched the sun sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The colors reflected in the water, shimmering like liquid fire, and the moment felt almost magical. I'm sorry for leaving, Sarah whispered again, voice small. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself. Didn't realize how much I was hurting. Both of us. Mark took her hand in his, holding it tightly but gently. You don't have to apologize anymore, he said. We're here now. That's what matters. She leaned slightly closer, resting her head near his shoulder. I was afraid you wouldn't wait for me, that you wouldn't come. I never stopped waiting, he said, his voice steady. Not for a second. I knew we had something worth fighting for. For a while they just sat there, the silence between them comfortable rather than heavy. The past weeks of heartbreak seemed to dissolve in the warmth of the moment, replaced by a fragile but real hope. Every small movement, every shared glance, every brush of hands felt like a promise not of perfection, but of effort, trust, and love. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah finally spoke again. I don't want to run away from us anymore, she said softly. I want to face everything, the fears, the doubts, together. Will you let me? Mark squeezed her hand. Always, he said. We'll face it together, whatever comes. Park grew quiet as the evening settled in, the last rays of sunlight fading into a soft twilight. Fireflies began to appear among the trees, tiny sparks of light dancing in the darkening air. It felt like the world itself was celebrating their reunion, acknowledging the fragile, beautiful step they had taken toward each other. They began to walk slowly through the park, side by side, hands intertwined. Every step was deliberate, a symbol of the path they were choosing together, a path built not just on love, but on trust, patience, and understanding. They talked quietly about the small things. First, the trees, the ducks in the pond, the flowers blooming along the path sand, then gradually about the bigger things. Their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. Mark realized that this reunion was not just about romance, was about healing, about two people who had been torn apart by fear and misunderstanding learning to come back together, stronger and more committed than ever. Every glance, every touch, every word reinforced that. They stopped near the center of the park, where a small fountain glimmered under the emerging moonlight. The water sparkled like diamonds, and Mark felt the full weight of the moment, the heartbreak, the longing, the wait, and finally the reunion. Do you remember what you said when we first met? Sarah asked softly. Mark nodded. That I wanted to be there for you, no matter what. She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. I think I understand now. You really meant it. And now I do too. They stood there together, hands still, entwined, hearts beating in a rhythm that matched the gentle splashing of the fountain. The city lights in the distance twinkled like stars, but in that moment it felt as though the park, the sunset, and the quiet night were theirs alone. Mark pulled her gently closer, resting his forehead against hers. No matter what comes next, we'll face it together. That's a promise. Sarah's eyes shone with tears, but they were tears of relief and joy. I promise to, she said. They remained like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet evening, letting the world fade away, the pain of the past, the fear of the unknown. The heartbreak of weeks without each other, it all felt distant now, replaced by a sense of fragile, tender hope. As the night deepened, they slowly began to walk back through the paths they knew so well, side by side, hearts aligned, ready to rebuild what had almost been lost. Every step forward was a step into a future they would face together, knowing that love, patience, and trust were stronger than any fear or distance. The park behind them grew quiet, but the memory of the sunset, the fountain, and the first steps of their reunion lingered, a promise that even heartbreak could be healed and love could find its way home.